On? Hi everyone. I don't think I know everybody in the room. I'm Larry Carson, as it says up there, Associate Director of Information Security Management. It's a long title. It means I'm a subject matter expert for information security at UBC, and I get involved in all of the security operations for the university. So I handle all of our incident response as well as practical issues around security management. So people, they have lots of lofty ideas about security at the university, and I thought I'd throw up this little comic to start things off. What security really looks like at UBC. So in the corner, we have data security, and we have firewalls, encryption, antivirus software, and then we have the other corner. Anybody named Dave in the room? There's not a slight on Dave, by the way. Yeah, Dave. Okay, what's that all about? So then that really represents our faculty and staff, and the students to some degree. But I think of our graduate students as staff. The human error factor is a huge problem for us. So some little newsworthy security incidents related to encryption. So in 2011, VGH lost 450 medical records via a resident laptop and a USB drive that were left behind at Toronto Pearson Airport. So they went to the bathroom, and nobody would touch their laptop and USB stick while they were in the bathroom, would they? Yeah, of course. It's gone. We lost 11,800, or sorry, UVic lost 11,800 records on a USB stick. You've all heard me talk about this in the past, or anybody not heard me talk about this? Anyone willing to admit they've heard me talk about this? Okay, we're not going to get any response from this group. That's engaging. So UVic had this USB stick that was locked in a safe, in a lockbox. The lockbox was in a safe. The safe was bolted to the floor inside a locked cabinet in a locked room. They ripped the safe out of the floor and walked away with it. The USB stick was unencrypted. They were found to be in violation of FIPA because they had the financial records, the direct deposit details of all the employees of the university, and they took it out once a month to update the information. The idea behind why they did this was that if there was a problem in their finance building, if the building burned to the ground or something, they had this stored on the opposite side of the campus in a completely different location where they could always pay their employees in the event of a disaster. So it was good planning, just missed the one step on encryption. We lost a laptop with 50,000 records. It was stolen from a vehicle. We managed to recover that laptop and found that it was all protected and everything was good. It was in the news. That was back in 2012. Elections Ontario lost 2.4 million voter records on unencrypted USB sticks. Twice. Didn't do it just once. They decided to do it a second time. So that was kind of brilliant. The folks looked up, were told by their boss to encrypt the USB stick before they put the voter records on it. They went and looked up encryption and became certain that encryption meant zipping the data. So they zipped the data, stuck it on the USB stick. They did not enable the encryption in the zip because they didn't understand what that meant, and lost the USB stick. Went to their boss, said what they had done. The boss said, okay, well, that's not encryption. Go look it up, do it right this time, and here's another USB stick. Go do it this time, and don't lose it again. And guess what they did? They looked it up. They were certain that zipping was the right way to do it, and so they did it again. So twice, there's two USB sticks out there with 2.4 million records. HRSD Canada lost 500,000 student loan records on a lost external hard drive. They actually lost two drives. So one drive they lost, it was a smaller drive with lesser number of student loan records on it. They were searching for it, and in searching for it realized they lost the big drive with 500,000 records on it. Their costs have been about $270,000 to date. They've been recalling all external hard drives and USB sticks that are unencrypted and shredding them into little tiny pieces of silicone and metal and plastic, and replacing them. Canada Privacy Commissioner Office, not to be outdone, so that's our main privacy office for all of Canada, lost 800 employee records on an external hard drive. They were moving offices from Gatineau to Ottawa, and when they moved the offices, they had this external hard drive in their data center, and somehow when they moved data centers, it went missing. No encryption. So they had to inform the 800 employees and sit there with egg on their face as the privacy commissioner, who is the one who tells people to encrypt their data, had to say, look, we didn't encrypt our data. We made the same mistake that we go out and we tell people not to make. So my point in bringing this up is not that we shouldn't do it. It's that if our best of people make the mistake, we're going to make the same mistakes here at UBC. We just want to try and control those and limit the risk on those mistakes and do as much as we can. That's why we're talking about today. You know about BC Ministry of Education. They lost 3.4 million student records on an external hard drive. That was in the news just this past September. So that's a big deal because probably a number of you, I'm in that list of 3.4 million records. So a number of you are probably in that list of 3.4 million records. And then we lost 160 student records on a TA's laptop that was stolen from campus. And that's just one that we went out and we publicly talked a bit about. And I think maybe you folks might have seen a message from Simon about that specifically. So that brings me to my next slide, which in July of last year, we started tracking thefts of devices that store UBC data. The red numbers are unencrypted. The green numbers are encrypted. It looks bad because it is bad. Devices are being stolen every month. December was a wonderful month for thefts. 15 devices stolen. The 4 devices that were encrypted were stolen from UBC IT. They were all encrypted. The 11 devices were stolen from faculties throughout the university. Unencrypted. That's not the place we want to be in. We have to investigate every single one of these unencrypted devices, find out what data was stored on them, and determine whether we have to do breach notification. That's what we're all here about today, is to make sure we don't end up in that position where we're doing breach notification for a lost or stolen data. So people ask about how the policies actually work at the university. So we have policies, procedures, standards, and guidelines. Guidelines are what's recommended. You don't have to follow them, but it's the university strongly encourages you to follow them and to take a look at them. Policies, procedures, and standards are ones that are mandatory and you must comply with. And the detail changes as you go lower down the list. Policies are very high level. Guidelines are very detailed. They're probably focused on technology-specific items. So what do we have in policies today? Well, we have Policy 104, which is our acceptable use and security of UBC electronic information systems. That came in June of 2013. And then in June of 2014, we released 21 security standards underneath Policy 104. 10 of them are standards for all users, 11 are management and technical standards. In there are encryption requirements and cryptographic controls. Encryption requirements talks about mandatory encryption for mobile devices that store personal information. So those include laptop full disk encryption, portable storage devices, USB sticks, external hard drives, smartphones, and tablets. And we also talk about strong passwords and passphrases that are there. They are required if you're protecting personal information through encryption. Cryptographic controls covers key escrow and says that you have to have key escrow. It doesn't quite say how you have to do it. It gives advice. You can do everything from writing down key information onto a piece of paper and locking it in a safe to using the university system of Mcafee encryption, which actually does key escrow for you automatically. But you need key escrow. So there's a number of different ways you can skin the cat. When we talk about the mobile device encryption, it's full device encryption. And there's a specific reason for that. In the thefts that we've had over the years, who remembers back the file vault encryption when it was actually user folder based, not full disk encryption? Yeah, we got a few hands up there. So we had a theft of a device. It was a Mac that actually had the old file vault encryption on it, which was user folder based. And we got very lucky that particular one had recovery software on it. We managed to get the device back and find that we didn't have any information stored outside the user folder. We had another case where another one used user folder encryption, and they knew for a fact that they'd stored personal information at the root of the drive. We had to go through processes for disclosure on that particular issue. And that's why we don't say file-based or folder-based encryption is acceptable. We say full disk encryption because at the end of the day, while we all know where to put the data, if we put it in user folders, we're not the people who are at risk. It's faculty members, staff members, and TAs, and they will store files wherever the system automatically takes them or where they think is the right place to put it. That doesn't mean it's necessarily the encrypted part of the drive. So if we encrypt the whole drive, then there's no risk of them accidentally putting it in the portion of the drive where it's unencrypted, and then we have a risk to the university. And it's a risk to other people as well. And that's probably the bigger problem, is that there are people, students, employees, and in some cases patients, who we don't want to put their data at risk. So device encryption. Keep calm, encrypt everything. Well, that's not true. We actually say encrypt laptops that have personal information, high-risk desktops and servers. And people ask me, what are high-risk desktop? If I encrypt, my favorite question on this one on desktops is, we're getting iMac stolen. So my desktop computer, we should encrypt that, and that will help reduce the chance of being stolen. No, not at all. It's not going to do anything to reduce the risk of it being stolen. It's just going to reduce the risk of data being exposed when that iMac is stolen. So iMacs are the most popular targeted desktop computers, but if they're storing personal information and they're in a high traffic area, you should be considering encryption for those high-risk desktops. Laptops, it's mandatory if they store any personal information. Encrypt storage devices, encrypt smartphones and tablets. Who's got an iPhone in here or an iPad? Okay, all right, any of you connected to Fastmail today? A number of you. So, and when you connected to Fastmail, you were forced to put a PIN or a password on your device. That automatically enabled the encryption on the device. Today, we have over 5,000 devices encrypted on smartphones and tablets. Where do priorities come from as to how we approach encrypting the university? Well, executive direction, that's the RVPs, committees, the Personal Information Task Force, and then input from units. And what criteria do we use? Well, we focus on the sensitivity of information. Personal information is obviously the highest priority, and then within personal information, there's different types of personal information. Personal health information is the highest priority, followed by financial data and then different identifiers that can be used for identity theft. So SINs, passport IDs, driver's license IDs, that kind of a thing. And biometric data is up there with the personal health information. So we had these unit priorities. We published these a number of years ago. We went through a project. We went out. We dealt with most of the high-risk units in there before we wound down the project. And the medium-risk ones are still underway in progress, and some of you are in some of those medium-risk categories. So current Mcafee adopters, we've got over 3,800. I think it's actually over 4,000 now is where we're currently at.
Systems around 6,000 something.
6,000.
Encrypted units is around 4, I believe.
Over 6,000 systems encrypted under Mcafee today. So what we're using Mcafee for is Windows and Mac. It manages the local file vault and BitLocker encryption, so it uses the native encryption, less problems with updates, patches. Those are some of the problems that we had when we initially rolled out semantic PGP when we were using on Windows and Mac. It wasn't so bad on Windows, but on Mac it was really problematic. Today we're only using PGP, or I should say we're planning on using it only for Linux. We have to actually revisit the Linux solution portfolio, and that's something we were just talking about before this session started. Devices, we've already talked about what has to be encrypted. What can you have that's exempt? Any laptops that do not or will not contain personal information. Right, so if a laptop doesn't contain PI or won't ever contain PI, then it doesn't have to be encrypted. To be honest, when we find laptops being stolen by typically faculty member and TA laptops, they come to us and they say, I know it should have been encrypted. It wasn't. Okay, do you have any student lists on there? Yes, I do. So there is already knowledge out there. That's what we're seeing. The problem is getting them to actually do what they're supposed to be doing. And that's where we need a strong push from you guys, back to faculty and staff and TAs. And we don't want to forget TAs, because TAs really are staff members of the university. They're employees of the institution.
So, Larry, what work is you're asking us to push our faculty and TAs. What work is being done to have their associations push them?
So that's a really good question, actually. There's been an escalation of the issue on TAs and faculty members, because we keep getting problems with devices being stolen. All the way to the executive, and we're asking them for a notification to come out specifically from the exec that's going to say, look, all devices have to be encrypted, because we can only try to coerce and encourage. You don't have the authority over a faculty member to tell them to do anything, because if they refuse to comply, we have no way to, if they're tenured, no way to do anything to them, quite frankly. You know that as well as I do. So it's getting into the executive level, and that's what we're doing. We're pushing that. But we need also you folks to go out there and to encourage, to engage at town hall sessions and say, look, these are the problems that we're seeing in the university.
Okay.
So other things that you need to consider: don't keep more data than you need on mobile devices. So delete records that aren't needed. I can't say how many times we see old class lists that go back years and years. Why the heck do you have them on these devices? Get rid of them. You don't need them. Put them on the network share, whatever you've got in your department. It's a much safer place than on that laptop or mobile device. And get rid of data that you don't need. We see it in the research side of things where they actually collect data. They're going to do research and they're going to do aggregate data analysis. They don't need identifiers for the aggregate data analysis. Get rid of those markers, those first names and last names and identifier numbers, whatever they are. Delete that data. And for God's sakes, don't store copies of your class lists in the cloud on Dropbox and Google. We actually have had a number of cases of this where that's come up in the past, and we've had to tell, and it's particularly TAs that do it more than anyone. So when you're talking to TAs, remind them that they're employees of the university, just like the rest of us. They cannot be storing this information in the cloud. What's the impacts to our departments? Well, we have breach notifications, so that's where we have to go out and disclose to people, tell them their information has been lost, what steps we've taken to mitigate that problem and make sure it doesn't happen again, and what we've done to try to protect their personal information despite the fact that it's been disclosed to somebody without authorization. There are fines up to $500,000 that potentially the Information Privacy Commissioner can push against the university. Those fines would be passed down to a department if a department was found to be negligent in the handling of personal information. And then cost to the department, notification costs, all the effort that's involved in communicating with the people that are affected. So if it's students, what do we have to do? If we have to spin up a call center for those students, that call center has attributed cost to it. If we have to do credit monitoring insurance, that department has to incur those costs because that's where the loss occurs. So it's trying to get those costs back to the right place where it's unfortunately incurred. And then reputation damage. This affects the university. It can affect departments. It can affect research units. So if we, in the course of research, lose data and somebody's up for a grant and they're trying to compete with another institution that hasn't lost data in that area of research, it can actually play a swaying balance for the research grant holders. They can say, well, U of T didn't lose any data, but UBC did. We'll give the grant to U of T. And that's not the place we want to be in. We want to be in the place where our researchers are getting the money they need. And then my final note on the reality versus what we think. We have this wonderful dream that we build somebody will build a 2048-bit or 4096-bit cluster to try and crack this encryption, and it's not going to happen. The reality, what would happen is if somebody actually really wanted the data on an encrypted laptop, they'd get a $5 wrench, bump them on the head until they say, "Give me your password." But the reality is that most of these thefts that occur out there, when people steal a laptop, like this one, it's because it's an opportunity. It's been left behind in some place, and they want it for the commodity. 99 times out of 100, they want to take this, they want to wipe it of data, and they want to go and resell it to a pawn shop or somewhere on the black market where they can make some money on it. And UBC, because we're a public body and we have open doors, we are a fantastic target. I watch the reports on a weekly basis. It's not fun to watch those reports about the criminal activities going on in the institution. The campus security knows it. The RCMP knows it. They all have suspected people that they know operate out here. Occasionally, we have a little triumphant moment when some of those suspected people are actually caught in the act and able to be arrested. They go away, and then we see them come back out of jail after a period of time. And then we know they're going to come back and target the university again. So it's a vicious cycle. And all we can do is make sure that the information on these devices gets protected. My contact information, any questions? Yeah.
So the iPhone thing, I was just looking it up. Do you know if it does an element of key escrow as well? Or does it, so there's a setting that will wipe your device after?
No, it doesn't do key escrow for it. So it's not doing key escrow on the iPhones or the tablets. It's only enforcing the device to actually put a password or a PIN on it. And in doing so, and it's an interesting thing that was introduced, I think it was in iOS 6 that they introduced it. It might have been iOS 5, where they introduced the device protection, what they call it on iOS. And as soon as you enforce the PIN or a password on your device, it automatically turn on hardware-based encryption on the device, doing full device encryption, which is fantastic.
There was something about, I think iPhones used to be the password and it got slower between each attempt until it got
Yes, it does.
ridiculously long. There was also a thing about like within a certain number of indirect attempts, you can wipe your device as well.
Yes.
Do you know if it enforces that on the
Yes.
devices? Okay.
Yeah. After 10 bad inputs of a password, it will wipe the device, but the length of time it takes to go between the bad ones grows exponentially through each one. So honestly, we've been doing this since, I think, I have to remember back in time here, 2012, I think, is when we first enabled it. We've never had a case of one device being accidentally wiped because someone, an owner of it, or their child accidentally input a bad password. It's never happened yet. It will one day, it just hasn't happened all these years.
So what you say is, if any device running iOS or Android will be encrypted if you have a password or something.
No, I'm saying the iOS ones will be. Android depends on the manufacturer, so and how they've implemented encryption on the device. We've been looking at enabling encryption for Android devices and seeing how we can ensure that it's done. Some of the manufacturers, like Samsung, might say, okay, if you enable a device password, we automatically enable encryption. Another one, like HTC, may say, okay, you enable a device password, we don't enable encryption. You have to explicitly turn on encryption. We haven't flipped that bit in ActiveSync to force the encryption yet. We've been doing a lot of analysis on it, and we've seen mixed results on the Android side. So,
It's being tested.
yeah, it's being tested.
And it's being pushed here to UBC IT.
I mean, one thing I find out.
We're doing it within UBC IT.
Yeah, I know. You guys have a lot of information. You have a lot of test case. I wish you guys upload this on somewhere so we can follow, because we don't have resources to do reinvent the wheel and retest everything, right? The best is to put on your website and we follow it, right?
I agree. No arguments with anything you just said.
I'd actually like to follow up on that a bit. I think it'd be really great if we had a more faculty-facing template talk, kind of similar to the things you have there, but one that we could easily just show to faculty members rather than having to come up with our own and pull people through and say, look at this, look at these scenarios that have gone wrong.
I would be
You guys
happy to
please-
come to your department and talk.
Oh, you would? Okay.
Yes. To me, I look at technical controls as being valuable to the university,
Yeah.
and we need technical controls. Everything from layer 7 protection on our networks to device encryption for laptops. But they aren't worth a bit of spit if we can't actually explain to faculty members and staff members why they're needed, what the problems are that we're trying to mitigate. If they don't understand that, they won't want to actually go through the process of getting their devices protected. And I'm happy to do that. That education awareness is a huge part of my job. Thanks, my hand.
Well, this I'll address the awareness issue, and this might be a heresy, but has there actually been a rational examination of the risk and the reward? Because we're going to be burning up, like you've already expended a considerable amount of resources trying to get this out, and not to count all the administrator time trying to get this thing. And then you've put up slides about the cost involved, but just like people break laws about speeding and things like that, even though it does cause damage and there is fines associated, is it a lot of people have made the conscious decision, I'll just be in violation, because the actual risk does not justify the cost of compliance. So, I mean, so I see all those egregious cases where people have lost lots and lots of gobs of data and $500,000, but is that, we're trying to comprehensively go after everybody, 10 people with hundreds of students and records or something like that. But is that really going to be an economical use of?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think the executive have already made their decision on that because they've decided to invest in encryption technology. So the way we're able to offer Mcafee encryption, it's not something that UBC IT has deep pockets and we decided we're going to fund the licensing for it. We went to the executive and said, this is what's going to cost and this is the kind of effort that's required to actually do it through the university. The reality is that the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act in BC tells us how we have to protect personal information. And under that act, they've specifically said, that devices need to be encrypted and they need full device encryption to protect them. So we as a public body, we're obligated under the Act to follow the law. And so we've made policy and standards to support the law. And then we put in place tools to actually do that. In my experience, when you go around and you talk with faculty members and explain the problem, 80 to 90% of them will actually be on board and want to actually do the right thing. If you've got the right people in the room at the time, they will stand up in a line and start encrypting devices. If you don't have the right people in the room at the time, it'll all fizzle over a period of days to weeks, and you won't get their participation. But if you have the right people, at the same time you talk to them about the problem and the risks that we're trying to address, they will stand up in a line and happily say, encrypt my device, because they want to do the right thing. The other 10 to 20% of faculty members who won't do it will always thumb their nose at the policies of the university because they don't think it applies to them. And I'm never looking for perfect. I'm looking for reasonable and what we can actually do for the university as a whole to say that we're well positioned and we've made an effort so that when we have the big device that goes out the door, a laptop that actually had 100,000 student records on it and it had highly sensitive data, and we're in the news, we say, yeah, but we've got 6,000 devices encrypted and we've been constantly going at this for the last 2.5 years, and we've made a conscious effort from our executive all the way down to the lowest person in the university to make sure that we're not putting personal information at risk. So it's not the case of UVic, where they said, we have an encryption policy and we have tools, but they never went out and did any effort to actually roll them out. They never went out and talked to faculties, they never talked to staff. They didn't say, here's how you can deploy the tools and how you can use them. So it behooves us to actually do the best we can and comply with the law, because at the end of the day, we're required to under law.
Right, and I'm not advocating that we openly but it's how we implement it and who we target, right?
Well, the next part is with Mcafee, most of that's already implemented and in place. All you need to do is install an agent on the computer and apply it to anything.
Well, I hope that's the case. Right?
It's super, super easy to do. It's just getting people to, I've been working with encryption since I worked at Ballard Power Systems like 12 years ago. And it was horrible back then. And it broke a lot of systems. But the way it's come along over the last while, you're using native encryption, which is built right into the OS, so you lose a lot of that worry that you had previously with the third-party encryption. It's come a long way.
Right. Well, it's where 80-20 rule or 90-10, most of it could go swimmingly, but that one case or two cases just absorb hours of your time trying to fix it.
It's always a good question back here.
Yeah. So we have been trying to do encryption. Chemistry is trying to strategize when doing encryption in the department by starting off with the staff computers. And staff computers, basically, they don't have a choice. We just go in and encrypt it. And then we go to the instructors, the TAs, and then the faculty members. As soon as I believe that as soon as they see most of the equipment in the department is encrypted, they would lean towards more and having their laptops encrypted. However, we are experiencing so much problem with the encryption. I'm pretty sure.
I've been contacted once regarding those issues.
I think you've been contacted way back in 2014.
Yeah, when we started off with Symantec wasn't exactly the prime example of a product.
It's not really Symantec. It's actually Mcafee. So whenever the computer is joined to a domain, it crashes, right? And the last message you said, well, it's a Windows problem, and can't help you. So with that, if I'm going to face my staff computers crashing all the time when they're connected to a domain and they're encrypted, I'm not going to do encryption.
Well, I don't have any
even
issues coming down and assisting and walking through an encryption and seeing what the problem is. With the current case that you're explaining, that's the first actual case that I've received in regards to issues with encryption deployment. That issue that we're talking about, I did do some research on it, and I couldn't find anything specific. But then again, I didn't have any log files from the dumps. I didn't have any information. I didn't have any visibility into what the actual issue was. It was a Mcafee pre-boot thing previously because you were using the older version of Mcafee, and then it was If it was that, then okay, I can understand there may be some issues because you're using a third-party encryption product to encrypt your hard drive. But when you're moving over to the Windows-based encryption, all Mcafee is doing is installing an agent and enabling BitLocker. If there's issues with blue screening and things like that, it is more of an internal Windows-based issue. And a lot of times, you may need to contact Microsoft to figure out what might be doing that. Could be something else, but like I say, without any of the logs or any of the information, it's impossible to know.
The way I look at it is we have over 6,000 systems encrypted right now. Those, big percentage of those are, well, I'll just say big, probably about half and half, are on Active Directory domains. The other half are out there on disconnected from domains.
No, I
And
understand, but
if this is one case out of 6,000, those are statistically, sounds like a problem specific to that instance, but we're happy to look at it and help you with it, with that one instance. So there's another question over here.
Well, it's just, we found it really useful to talk about our backups at the same time, because whenever somebody's had a problem with BitLocker or with anything else, that's turned them off almost irreversibly if they've lost data. So we tend to do it, and I would suggest that it should be done at that level as well, discussing centralized backups at the same time.
No, I completely agree with you. One of the things that we should always talk to faculty and staff about is if the only copy of your data resides on this device, you are at high risk of losing the only copy of data you've got. It could be stolen tomorrow, left behind on a bus, left behind in a restaurant, just left in a classroom, stepped out for 2 seconds, and then it's gone. And then you've lost your only copy of the data. These mobile devices should never be the only copy of the data. They should be syncing them into a network drive, right? That whatever data folders they've got. They should be doing backups on a regular basis if that's where they're mainly operating from. So I agree completely.
If that's not backup, I'm worried. I'm worried about the entire OS have to rebuild it from scratch, and that will take a lot of resources. Because
But that's the same thing as when you have a theft or a loss, you're still going to have to build a new laptop and deploy it. My laptop's encrypted. I've had encrypted laptops since long before encryption was cool to have around the university. And I sleep very well at night. I back up my data regularly on a daily basis to the network. I know that when this device goes disappearing on me one day, and one day it will, it's going to be a pain in the ass to actually rebuild on a new device and get myself set up and operational again. But I also know I won't be out any data because I've been regularly backing it up.
You just said it, right? You said you can pay the net to rebuild a machine. That's exactly what we don't want, right? Because the data I can recover no problem.
Yeah.
But when the time, one time you build a machine will take you a day or two just to build one laptop.
Encrypted or not, you're still going to have to do that.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, we don't have a strategy to back up the
Well, the nice
OS
part,
inside.
MSL, we did a presentation for them recently about SCCM and such. So there are services out there as well that can help speed up and make that process easier as well.
Actually, part of what I was getting at was the backups. Like, the easiest thing I think a lot of people are used to though is plugging in like a portable disk and backing up to that unencrypted, and then that's the thing that walks away.
No, and as portable disks need to be encrypted as well. That's one of the things that the Mcafee allows us to do is actually encrypt the disk as well. So there's external drives. I mean, you can do it natively. You can use BitLocker and encrypt the disk. You can use File Vault and encrypt the disk. I don't care. Just encrypt that darn external disk before you do the backup to it. And in fact, I have a hardware encrypted external drive at my desk that I regularly sync data to as well. So I'm a little bit paranoid, but given what I do for a living, right? It's understandable that I'm paranoid. So I have literally 2 copies of my data, one on this external drive and one on the network. I think that was probably a good point to hand it over to Jason for his presentation.
Sure. Did you have anything you wanted to go up first, or?
No,
I think a lot of stuff was actually went through already, so my presentation it's more of talking points, and it seems like the talking points are the biggest thing here, because I'm pretty sure a large portion of you guys have actually gone through the training initially. I know a large portion of you may use the product, but an even larger portion of you went to the training and left it on your desk and never looked at it. Yeah. Now, for some of you, yeah, I got it's so it's a very basic presentation. So essentially what I'm looking at is going through management and native encryption offered by Mcafee as well as Drive Encryption. Drive Encryption is the third-party product, such as the semantic product, where you have a pre-boot login at the beginning, whereas native encryption, obviously, you're managing the enablement and key escrow of file vault BitLocker. Drive Encryption was the first product, and I think for some of you that were in my older training sessions, you were trained on the Drive Encryption, which we call WDE. That product did work quite well. It did its job. I've had one system out of probably 3,000 that actually had an issue, and it was the only one I could recover. And that was one of my own test systems, and it was non-recoverable because I tried doing bit-by-bit decryption, which it failed. So out of all those machines that were encrypted with it, I only had the one that I was not able to recover. The issue that we ran into with native encryption is, or Drive Encryption, as Larry said, is you're running a third-party program in pre-boot. That program requires drivers for the hardware. With the way hardware is coming out these days, you've got touchscreens, you've got fancy keyboards, you've got new trackpads, and a lot of these drivers are not getting put into the pre-boot screen or the pre-boot environment. So what's happening then is you get, and I'm sure a lot of you, if you've done the encryption with Drive Encryption, you probably notice that some keyboards and mice don't work. Laptop keyboards don't work. So that was one of the issues. The other issue is that when Apple would come out with updates, they don't release this out to the encryption providers. So what happens then is you get this new product, and then you're stuck on an older version of OS X until the Mcafee provider has released an update. So Mcafee releases an update, but then I also have to bring it in, I have to get it updated, and I have to do development testing internally to make sure it's going to function, and then it's going to deploy out correctly. So there's a lot of work that gets you to the point where you're able to deploy it out to your users. So I forget which release they did. Apple just straight up said, we're not giving you guys access to pre-boot encryption anymore, so we're going to enforce native encryption. So Mcafee had to come up with a native encryption product. It's worked quite well. You're still pseudo-reliant on the update path, so instead of locking yourself out of a system when you update your Mac, you're just causing communication errors between the server and the client machine. So it has come a long way. With each release, you get new features, more manageability, so you get more ability to enforce strong passwords. With BitLocker, the next release will actually have the ability to do a lot more, such as rotating the recovery keys, things like that. So there's a lot more coming out. But the one thing that I do get asked a lot is about OS support. So faculty, as you probably all know, they just bring whatever they want in. They don't care. They just pop it on your desk, install my software, we'll go. So the issue with that is when you get those systems in, they're typically Home Edition, sometimes Pro. Well, if it's Windows 7, you can't encrypt that with BitLocker because it's not supported. You have to have Enterprise for BitLocker. So I'll make this available to you guys. I'll throw it in the Mcafee documentation folder so you can see the actual OS support. But the one to look at is the OS X support. So as you can see, this is the amount of releases since September 2012. Now, as you start getting into the newer releases with 10.10, you'll see that the different versions are gradually getting to the point where the older native encryption product does not support that update. So what that means is that when it's trying to push down the policies and such, the Mcafee extensions, they don't read it. Now, I update all the extensions on our side. So as long as you're using our tags and our install tasks, you're getting updated every time. If you're using your own, you're on your own for getting those updated. The next release will actually be in 2 or 3 weeks to bring up to date for El Capitan, to make sure we're fully up and things are getting rolled out there. The other newest thing that's coming out for Apple is, as Larry was saying, with the USB encryption. Mcafee has provided USB encryption, but up until the most recent release, if you encrypted a USB on a Windows machine and tried to put it into a Mac, you're not going to be able to do anything. Or if you encrypted, there was no client for the Mac. Well, now with FRP 5.0, you can encrypt a USB on a Mac or a Windows platform and pull it out, plug it into a Mac, launch the program, and it'll open up the folders. Same with encrypt on a Mac, pull it over to a PC. So I know a lot of faculty and such, one of the issues is when you encrypt a USB, okay, well I use a PC here for regular use, but what happens when I go here? It's a Mac. Or I use a Mac, but when I go to presentation desk, it's a PC, so I can't use my encrypted USB. What do? Well, now that there's that solution out there, maybe getting USB encryption rolled out might make things a little bit smoother.
Does that encryptor live on the USB, or it has to be installed on the host system that you
Nope,
put into?
it's fully, if you guys remember the encryptable Kensington USB sticks, it has that little program on it. You just run it and it'll open it up for you. Very similar. So you don't have to have the Mcafee agent on the system that you're opening it on. As long as it's been encrypted, has that program on there, launch it, and it opens it up.
And that's Linux.
It's available today. I don't believe it's fully released yet because I haven't documented it. And it's pretty big. So
Linux is still out of reach.
Linux is, so the issue is there's no real good product to support Linux. I've reached out to Symantec. I'm regularly reaching out to Mcafee to get a native encryption product. Because you have luck in Linux, but there's nothing that manages it. Primarily, there's so many different versions of it that, yeah.
A question about BitLocker. If I have an old laptop installed Windows 7 Enterprise, there's no TPM on it? Can I use it?
If you're using Windows 7, no TPM with BitLocker, I could tell you that there is a registry hack that you can do to get it so BitLocker will enable without a TPM. However, I'm going to tell you, because I don't want to support it, that you probably shouldn't do a registry hack on the system. You should get them up to version 8 or 8.
But Windows 10 is okay.
Windows 10 for sure. Non-TPM systems, you can set a PIN on the preview, so when they load up, you just type in a PIN or password and it loads them in.
But that password, last time I did one, I don't know how to change that. Is it once it's encrypted, if I want to change that PIN, I have to decrypt and encrypt again?
I'm pretty sure you have to be in the system, go into the BitLocker settings, and then change the password from within.
That's correct. You can do it from the credentials management inside the managed BitLocker.
I've never actually tried it, so.
There is a way.
Just a note on Windows 10. We're currently, it's a little bit late, I know, because Windows 10 rolled out last summer. We're doing a privacy impact assessment on Windows 10 and trying to identify all of the settings that are needed for it to safely be run in a public body institution in British Columbia because of the privacy and security issues with data that leaks out of Windows 10 by default in the out-of-box configuration. When we're done with that privacy impact assessment, we will be publishing all of the settings that we're pushing out. And as a way that if you're running your own systems and you're not connected, whatever, you can push your own settings to your own thing. But
Cortina.
yeah, like disabling Cortana and disabling Windows telemetry, and there's a whole bunch of other things.
So Jason,
long list.
go back to the slide and all the Windows version. Can you add one more column with a TPM and say if it's work or is it not? Or if not, put a footnote of what people should do. I think that is one that we need to know.
Well, a lot of it is, it's in the documentation. I put a lot of that stuff in the documentation. I can create a matrix for what's
Just add another
required.
column. That's all I'm asking, right?
It's documentation, right? Like, no matter what, if you're going to deploy a product, you want to read the documentation prior to deploying. Because if you send it out to a client system and they come to you with an issue and you don't know how to support it, what are you going to do? Right? I try to put as much info in the documentation as I can, Again, I can provide a matrix. I think you guys actually created one where it shows the TPM versions, Windows versions. Pretty much all you have to remember is for BitLocker you need TPM version 1.2 and above, and Windows 7 Enterprise and above with TPM.
I think the chart would be really handy though, coming from you. Like we created one and we passed it around and there was some discussion about it, and it just, a picture's worth 1,000 words. If you could, reading through, slogging through a lot of documentation is tough when you've got some heated faculty member standing in front of you and you're trying to figure something out.
And like I said, right, you have a depository of our documents, but telling you true, it's just too much overwhelming what we want to see, right? We are not, our job is not holding full-time encryption.
Well, I could take all that documentation and put it back into one document.
No.
It's not too many documents.
And when I say that chart is important, I need it. I look at it, I know exactly what I need to do, right? So.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. For everyone, they'll still have to open that document and read it though. One of the things that I'm finding is a lot of people, they just kind of zip through it, don't really read it, and then we end up having questions down the road about, okay, well, why doesn't this work? Why doesn't this work? Okay, well, it is right here. I know it's a lot of documentation. I know it's a lot because I actually wrote it all. So going through it, it definitely is a pain.
Where do the documents reside today? Are they in Word documents or PDFs?
They're currently Word documents on SLS.
Is there any option for putting them into a wiki that can be searchable?
I don't. We decided we didn't want to make them public because there's a lot of information as far as the server.
Why restricted them to UBC only?
They are. So if you've gone through the Mcafee encryption training, you get access to SLMS, which gives you access to all the documentation. We're trying to restrict the documentation people who've gone through the training because it does have all the IPs for the servers, it has all the firewall port requirements. There's a lot of information in there that if somebody gets it, that's not. It doesn't actually really matter because if somebody really wants it again, they're going to get it. But we try to minimize the leaking of server-based information as much as possible.
So one of the major decisions when you come lab 10 is when someone comes with an old system is it less painful to get them to upgrade to 10 and then the rest of it becomes easy, or
it's dependent on the people, it's dependent on what they use their machine for, it's dependent on the software that they're using. I can't tell you to go upgrade your clients to Windows 10 because they may have some homegrown applications that don't run on Windows 10. And they're going to be coming to you with more problems because saying, you upgrade my machine and now my stuff doesn't work.
So it's better in some cases just to do the registry hack, get the thing encrypted.
Well,
and
the thing is drive encryption does work.
Yeah.
I've got 4,000 systems running drive encryption.
No, that's not the issue. The issue is like all this other stuff that, whether to upgrade to 10, which will break all their...
So I'll talk about that in a minute, but just so you know...
Sorry, Joseph, what he was saying though is that you can use McAfee's drive encryption with Windows, not BitLocker.
Yes.
Yeah, all right.
Right?
So there is a solution there for systems, and I'll be getting to that in a second.
We had less success with that.
It works. We just prefer... We'll talk about that.
So on that note, we'll just kind of go through what's M&E versus drive encryption, because this is obviously one of the things that you're bringing up. So native encryption is a Mcafee extension. So when I say extension, so when you think Mcafee has many different layers. So you have the Mcafee agent. Within the agent, you then have extensions applied to that. So you've got drive encryption, management of native encryption, rogue system detection, antivirus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's tons of different products, and the agent is basically just there to help communication between the server and the client. So the native encryption extensions allows admins to manage the encryption state and key escrow of natively encrypted Windows and Apple systems. Drive encryption obviously is a third-party whole disk encryption product. Allows administrators to provide secure whole disk encryption for Windows-based systems. Now, the thing with the drive encryption that differs from the management of native encryption, obviously it is not native encryption. Native encryption, if you can do it, that is the way to go because it's native. It's there. Drive encryption, however, it is there. It does work. You may run into odd issues, and you guys will probably talk about those. Typically, what I found was issues regarding keyboards, mice, things like that not function. So why M&E over drive encryption? Well, why would any administrator choose drive encryption over native encryption or vice versa? There's really only a couple of reasons why you would choose drive encryption over native encryption, so I was just going to go over those. The first reason is shared laptops. Now, BitLocker encrypted systems, if you have them on a domain and they do have the ability to have multiple logins, you can ignore this and you can continue going with a BitLocker solution, native encryption. However, if those laptops are not on the domain, you will want to use drive encryption if they hold private data, simply because you can set group access through Mcafee to drive encryption. Whereas with BitLocker, if you're setting a PIN on the system, that is one password for one system. So, okay, how many people are you going to tell that password to? Are you going to put the password on a little piece of tape on the laptop keyboard? You're going to stick it underneath somewhere? Okay, well, just leave it unencrypted because there's no point. You just gave everyone the keys. So with the drive encryption, it allows you to add any number of users to a group. Once that group syncs up, they log in with their username and password. Bob's your uncle, they're in. It's the same thing with the native encryption if you have them on a domain. So the domain lock is, like the login for the domain is what grants the access through that. Systems without TPM or running Windows below Windows 7 Enterprise. So as you're saying, there's a number of systems out there because nobody really ordered the TPM chipset in their systems because it costs more money. A lot of faculty members, they don't have Windows 7 Enterprise because it costs more money. Most of them come with home. So what do you do in those situations? Well, yes, as you say, you can upgrade them to 8.1 or 10, but then you have to think of what the consequences of doing that will be. Will it be smooth? Will it break their software? Do you want to take those risks, or do you want to take that, do more testing with it, but get them secure for now? So you can use the drive encryption to do that because you don't require TPM. Systems with OS level below Windows 7 Enterprise, again, same thing. You can registry hack them. No, not with below. With, my wording's not good here. The last one would be systems running Windows 7 Enterprise with no TPM, or it would be one of those two. So for systems that are running Windows 7 Enterprise, as I said, there's a registry hack to get it enabled, but I don't advise doing that. So what you should do is use drive encryption for those cases. Outside of that, there's no reason to use drive encryption. Use native encryption as much as possible. So there's a few talking points that I've had come up. The biggest one is bootcamp. It's not supported, period. That's it. That's all. The second one is regarding Mac systems. So I've played with this over the last week just to find out what the issues are, what it might be, because I get a lot of people that say, okay, well, I installed the Mcafee agent, no icon has come up, I'm waiting. Yeah, so patience. The biggest thing is just being patient, because what it has to do, the Mcafee agent has to reach out to the server, pulls down the policies, okay, yes, this is what we are, okay, now we need to pull down the installers. Okay, we're installing them, sending keys back and forth. If there's any break in that communication from start to finish, it will restart that process. If you're finding your system goes to sleep, it will restart that process. Patience. That's the only thing I can say. If you really wanted to dig down to it, I do have on the Mcafee docs folder, there is a troubleshooting document where I've put whenever I find something, I try to put it in there. But I just updated the log files because in the recent release, they changed the log file locations. If you want to find out what's going on, do a tail on the log files and just watch as you're pushing the commands. And you'll see it'll be ticking through, pulling, sending. It does come up. The only thing that I can say is don't install the agent again. Nowhere in the documentation does it say reinstall the agent on top of the agent, because with Windows-based systems, there's no problem. It'll just reinstall over top of it, and it'll carry on its merry way. With the OS X-based systems, what happens if you install it more than once? It more than likely will break the file system for that folder. It'll lock out access to it because it's trying to run stuff and you're installing over top of it. You just get that nice little red circle with the line through it, and you're not going to get anything working. In those cases, sudo rm rf library Mcafee, enter, reboot, reinstall, and then patience. That's the biggest issue I've seen with Mcafee on Macs. Outside of that, I haven't really found anything. System upgrades. So one of the things that we try to do on a regular basis, we're always trying to keep the systems up to date. I usually do it on a quarterly basis. Sometimes it falls outside of that, where OS X will do a release and I have to update to get that supported. Windows sends out Windows 10, and I have to do an upgrade to get that supported. So generally what I do is I have a Mcafee admins mailing list that I send out all these updates to. I try to notify people 2 weeks prior to doing a system upgrade. However, I've also heard that nobody knows about these emails because the people that are on the mailing list either aren't notifying the technicians that are working with the product, or they're just briefly seeing it and not registering that it's being sent out.
So the upgrade process, it's not this, the agent polls once in a while, and or it's
the agent
integrated
is
into
always,
the system?
Agent's always communicating. As long as you're using the rules and tags that I set up, which I'm pretty sure 95% of the people on Mcafee are, you'll always get those updates. Now, what the client will see on their side is they'll get a little reboot prompt. It says, hey, we did an update. You want to reboot, yes or no? If you click no, it disappears, that's it. You don't have to reboot. So there is no forced reboots. The only thing that clients see is that annoying little pop-up that says, hey, I need to reboot. Other than that, there's really no client-side impact. The main thing is just to kind of let you guys know. Now, for the upgrade process, we do put a bulletin on it.ubc.ca. I do the outage typically in the evenings when no one's around, so if you guys are trying to log into a console while I'm doing an update, it won't function. And then, you know, as clients are coming in on the morning, connecting in, that's when they get their product updates. The only product that has not been getting updated is the Mcafee agent on Apple computers, because the process for that was really, really lacking in the older versions, so it hadn't deployed it automatically. Windows PCs are now getting their updates for the Mcafee agent, and this next update, the Mcafee agent will be updating automatically on Apple computers as well. Regarding the admins list, if you want to be on it or if you want to see it, send myself an email here or forward your email to Moria or to your head admin, the one who went to the training, or just open a ticket through it.ubc.ca/SOS and we'll get you added to the list. Other than that, it's kind of open to you guys if you have questions. Yep.
Well, how does the systems that are already in firewall or BitLocker that you want to add to this?
Sorry, what was that?
If they've already been like standalone done with BitLocker or...
If they're standalone done and you want to get them escrowed into Mcafee, just install the agent, apply the tag, you're done.
Does it re-encrypt everything?
You don't have to re-encrypt it, no. It's just install and go. I guess I could do a demo to show you how that works. So let's pick. You guys actually see that?
No, can't read it.
I can't see it when I'm sitting on the screen, so. That better? Yeah. So as you can see, there's actually a substantially large amount of clients in here. This is just my dev machine. So when I'm talking about tags and things like that, This is what I'm talking about. There's this piece here. I should just look at my screen, not that screen. So when you're wanting to apply a tag, install the agent. The system will pull up into here underneath your own container now. If any of you have logged into Mcafee website, you know the only thing you'll see in there is my organization, your group, and a lost and found. So we'll pretend this is your group. So all you're going to do, install the agent, system comes in, hit the checkbox, apply tag, select your tag, install encrypt, okay, and you're done. The amount of time it takes for the system to go, I actually never keep the systems until they're done. I install the agent, apply the tag, make sure the tag's taking place, hand the system over. That's it.
Okay, so that's the installation. You basically install the agent, and then you don't do anything then, and then you go back to this thing, and then that pushes all the policy, all the software onto it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the workstation owner, what do they see? All of a sudden,
They
just blank out.
If you give it to them before everything's completed, so if you install the agent and hand it back to them and say, hey, you're going to be getting encrypted, what they will see is a reboot prompt in the top right hand corner. Again, it's not a forced reboot. They can't click no, but they will get a reboot prompt. That reboot will happen whenever they do it, or if they click yes, it'll be done. Outside of that, they don't see anything. Now, typically, I get to the point where it reboots. Once it's rebooted, then I carry it. With a lot of systems, what you'll find when enabling the file vault is it wants their password. So when you're if you put in your password on their system, then what do you do, right? So a lot of times you don't want them necessarily sitting there while you're encrypting it, because it can take some time. But outside of that, they don't see it.
So what if the boundary run out before finish encryption fine?
It's fine. Even if you're using drive encryption, I've had my Windows system using the third-party drive encryption. I picked it up, yanked the battery out, plugged it back in, powered it up, no problem. It just suspends wherever it is.
So a question about the PIN on Windows 10. So they have to have a different login then when the system boots up?
Yeah, so
just
if you're
use their Windows login
if you're
for that?
using PIN mode, you do have to set a PIN, which means there is a pre-boot login.
Because we don't have a domain, so we would be having to do pins then, or?
No, because if you have a TPM chipset, it then uses the built-in local user accounts.
The majority of systems do not have TPMs, so you use pins.
You got to use pins.
So the user will have to log in twice, so to speak.
Okay.
But if there are multiple users for the laptop, it's not recommended.
That's why you use drive encryption.
Well, in that case, don't you have one PIN, but the PIN actually governs the entire process and user.
There's only one thing. You can only set one thing. Why they do it that way, I don't really know. You can give an option for it, but so in cases where you have multiple people logging into the same system and you don't have TPM, use drive encryption.
Any other questions before we move on?
Oh yeah, and if any of you are trying to get back, and I know I have to walk you through it, so if you want, I'll walk back to the office and we'll do a quick run through. When you're doing it, the biggest thing is tell me. If you're having issues, tell me. Like I said, we've got like over 6,000 systems, and I don't get many phone calls, so obviously there's no issues. And for Jane.
Yes.
If you guys like, if you want me to come in, I'll take a look at it. It's just super busy, so trying to get the time to do it because I'm juggling multiple projects at the same
We
time.
have to schedule, we removed the encryption. We did a few different machines and we get the same problem.
Well, I'd still like to come in and see what's happening because it's either going to be something in the configuration on the file shares, on the systems. The odds that it is a Mcafee issue is severely low, especially if you're using native encryption.
So we just want to take sometime here and talk about what computer science did for kind of getting the first steps of encryption going in our department. The end goal for our kind of first stab at it was to get our faculty encrypted. And we pretty much got there. So thought it might be interesting just to see sort of what our steps were, if you guys had any questions. So yeah, our first steps really were to meet with UBC IT. We talked to Jason, we talked to a few other people, just get information about the product, which you guys already have. We also met with Arts. Arts ICT were one of the first ones, I think, to adopt it on a large scale. Would you say that's true? Or?
Yeah. They've pretty much been with us in semantics.
Yeah, and they did a good job with it. So we wanted to just ask them how things went, and we kind of picked their brains for a bit. I don't know if you guys know Ricardo, but we met with him, and he felt good about it. He said things went well. They were able to get to an 80% faculty adoption rate, which they were happy with, and which we decided, well, let's see if we can target those. And so after we kind of got that pre-information, we decided to go ahead with it. After that, it was just a matter of doing a lot of the first steps that now Jason has provided for everybody else pretty much. Getting familiar with the console, which Jason just showed it to you guys. It's pretty easy to use. Figuring out all the options. And again, this is a very simplified view. I'm not talking about TPM chips or anything like that. But the decision really was, well, let's do, we'll use the Mcafee console, we'll use built-in encryption if we can, and we'll kind of go from there. So we wanted to make sure we did a lot of testing first. So as you guys know, CS has a somewhat large tech staff, and so we decided to do basically internal testing. So we have laptops that we all use day to day. So let's encrypt them and see what happens. And it went really well. I think, we did 8 Macs and 4 Windows machines. Pretty much went fine. Windows encryption, again, went okay. This kind of, doing this testing made us realize that, if possible, we're going to need to migrate away from Windows 7, especially while there is a free upgrade for Windows 10. I know Windows 10 has some privacy concerns. You can turn a lot of that stuff off. In fact, a new build came out, I think, in October, which gives you even more granular control over some of the things you can turn off in Windows 10. And so at this point, we felt comfortable recommending it to faculty if they were willing to go along for the ride. And so for us, what it really meant was that our use case was make sure Macs get up to at least 10.8, which is not a problem for the most part. We were on 10.11, I think. And go up to Windows 10 if we can still use it on Windows 7. So we then decided, okay, well, how are we going to get the faculty to be on board with this? We had to decide, or we had to figure out, well, why are faculty resistant to it? For us, there's a lot of computation done by computer scientists on their personal machines. And it really was a matter of, well, hey, I'm running MATLAB or whatever, I'm crunching math. This is, in previous tries of this, it's slowed down my system. It's terrible, I don't want to deal with it. I'd say there's 2 benefits now. Processors are very fast now. And also, now that we can use the native encryption, there's almost no overhead. Like, almost 0, I would say. It's quite amazing. You can't even tell the encryption's on. And it's all real time, you can't tell. Which faculty were happy to hear. The second thing was, is it going to break? I had a bad experience in the past. This is tough, but we had to basically say, listen, if something breaks, we're going to be here to fix it for you. We're going to work with you guys on a one-on-one basis. We're not just going to encrypt 50 Macs today. We're going to do it individually and make deployments and hold your hand and make sure it all works, because we want to get there with you. And, work with the faculty members individually, which they're always happy to hear. We did get a few people saying, oh, UBC's tracking me, or they're going to be able to somehow get into my system without my permission. That's not true. Even if you're doing key escrow, it's really for your benefit. There's no weird tracking or anything like that. And again, like I said here, have a dialogue with the faculty member to answer any questions, because there's lots of other questions, and for the most part, they're pretty simple. We also want to make sure that the department head was on board in our department, and also associate heads and a bunch of other stuff. And it really was a matter of, for faculty to be okay with this, they need to really kind of be told that, hey, you need to do this. It needs to come from the top because a lot of faculty members just aren't going to be interested in doing it because, hey, UBC said so. How many faculty members do you guys have still using Dropbox or still using Gmail when they're not really supposed to be doing it? So we wanted to try and make this something that faculty members wanted to use. And once we decided to go, we had to, remind them a lot. Email them saying this is what the project's going to be, some reminder emails, eventually send emails directly to people who haven't done it yet, knock on doors. It took a lot of time, but, that was the only way it was going to get, that was the only way we were going to proceed is if we actually took the time to get to people individually. Because again, it's a big project and we have to schedule times and in some cases upgrade OSs and whatever, answer questions. So it's, it is time that's going to be taken out of your schedule. We decided that was worth it though.
A good time to do the upgrade was when faculty members were actually upgrading their laptops. It was a perfect opportunity to say, we'll set up everything for you, including the encryption. So it was relatively kindness.
Yeah, the policy very quickly became if you happen to be buying a new laptop, it's going to have encryption on by default. And we just rolled that into our setup phase. So we split things. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering, you had something about provide alternatives on the previous slide. What did you mean by that?
So I probably shouldn't have written that. There's not a ton of good alternatives. The alternatives were more like, okay, I'm okay with encryption, but I don't want to do key escrow. Well, that's fine. We're okay if you turn on encryption on your own. Just let us know that you turned it on. That's fine. We had one user who said, listen, I don't want to encrypt my whole disk, but I only do a couple things with PI. I want to just encrypt a folder. Well, I don't really want you to do that, but I can't force you not to. But if you're going to do that, talk to the head and see if they'll be okay with it. They might not be, but at least there's a dialogue happening. And then maybe the head will then say, listen, sure, do this for right now. But next year, we really want you to change this. You know what I mean? Like, so just have a conversation. I think being okay with them not doing key escrow and not using the Mcafee console is the key thing. We had a lot of faculty members who were fine with encryption. They just didn't want to go through the hassle of having to do it with us. Or they want to say, listen, I'll turn it on in a couple months and let you know when that happens. Okay, that's fine.
So at the end of the day, how many did you get?
We'll get there.
So that would mean, like, for example, if someone had a Mac, I said, I'll turn on the file. Is it file?
Yeah.
But I'm just going to skip over the Mcafee.
Exactly. Yeah. And we were okay with that. You also have to believe that they did it if they tell you you're going to do it, but hopefully.
Yeah, and in my fact document, which I might have.
Watching. Well, instead of escrowing your keys locally, you're now giving your keys to Microsoft and Apple.
Yeah. No, I just told them to store our own cloud. That's what I asked everyone, and they did that. Right? I assume them they save to our cloud from the internal. You don't have to give up to nobody. Right. So
I think it's iCloud and Microsoft is essentially the same thing.
our own cloud. Our own Dropbox.
Oh, I see.
Do you have turn Windows Workspace?
Yeah,
you can work this, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we did do a stage rollout. So we started with the Macs because we felt that was kind of going to be an easier place to start with. There's only the one choice, either works or it doesn't work, and it's pretty quick to turn on. So we had a few older Macs that we were able to upgrade with the faculty members. And almost all the faculty members said, yeah, no problem, we'll do it with you, we made time. Again, in a couple cases, they just turned on Follow on themselves, and that's fine. We also had some cases where they turned it on because we had some faculty members who were quite excited about it. They're, oh yeah, I want encryption. That makes sense. We want to get this done. So they turned it on, and we then installed the management console after the fact. On Windows, that's very easy. You just install the Mcafee client, boom, you're done. On Mac, it's almost as easy. You have to change the escrow key.
You actually don't have to do that anymore.
Oh, really?
I don't believe so.
Okay, last time I tried it, you did. That's awesome if you don't. Just in case you still do, it's super easy to change the key anyways, and it just immediately gets uploaded back to the server. So it's not a big deal. So yeah, that's a benefit too, saying, listen, if you'd still like to escrow with us, but you're on a trip right now, or you just can't make the time, you can definitely turn it on your own and come back to us later. In fact, you were pretty pleased with that. We then moved on to Windows. As I said earlier, we tried to use BitLocker when we could. We had a lot of faculty on 7, and again, we had Home and Pro. Almost all of them were okay to move to 10. We had very few people with applications that wouldn't work on 10. So, we kind of made a system of, okay, well, we're going to do some backups for you guys. We're going to help you with the upgrade. We're going to help you with a restore or migrate data or whatever we need for you, or whatever you need to feel comfortable, we'll help you with. In some cases, we did the 7 home to 10 home upgrade, and then we had to use another key from their DreamSpark license to upgrade them from home to Pro. I don't know if all you guys have DreamSpark access, but that was helpful for us.
Do you have any problem? We have lots of multi-scanner, multi-functional scanner. Do you have lots of those that fail on you?
We've been lucky. I don't know if we've just been lucky or what, but I can't think of a single system that just failed the upgrade. And
not upgrade. Fail to use the existing device and attach to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Printers.
We haven't had issues with that offhand. I think we had some old scanners that were being phased out anyways, and so it wasn't a big deal. There certainly is hardware out and about that doesn't support Windows 10, but I find that the break from XP to 7, where there was tons of stuff that didn't work, or XP to Vista, I should say. These days, 7 to 10, I find most stuff supports it. Especially now, 10's been out for a while. When 10 first came out, there were a lot of issues, but these days, at least in our department, we've been okay.
How do you back up?
So there's a couple ways to do it. You could take snapshots or things like that. Snapshots aren't great because if you're going to restore the snapshot, then it's going to go back to 7. It was more a matter of, okay, let's identify the files that you want backed up. These are all the files that you do your work in. Copy it to an external hard drive. It was a slow, tedious process. We didn't use any kind of automatic software because we wanted to make sure we captured exactly what the faculty member felt was important. So we actually went out and we bought a new external hard drive that we started dedicated to just backing things up.
So with that said now, of course, those also being high theft targets for drives that are loose, you guys are enforcing the encryption on the.
We're not.
Okay.
Yet. That's something that we should.
Because it would be a direct copy.
Yeah, absolutely. For those backups, we did that stuff manually in my office. It wasn't like I was going somewhere with the drive. But you're right, someone could go out and steal that. I wiped it after every backup, but you're right. In the future, our plan will be, I think, to turn on encryption, force encryption for USB devices. Right now, if you plug in a USB device, you get a prompt that says, hey, can I turn on encryption on this device? And faculty members are okay to say no. But
I'm just thinking of all the time machine folks.
Yep. So the time machine is a good point, and I don't think people realize this. If you turn on encryption on your Mac and you back up to time machine, those backups are not encrypted. You have to wipe your time machine. Then when you back up, if you're encrypted, then it will encrypt the time machine. So even if you have encrypted Macs, if your time machine originally wasn't encrypted, it'll always never be encrypted. It unencrypts when it does that Mac backup. So that was a little scary for some professors too, where they said, okay, I'm willing to do that, but there's going to be a time here where I'm going to have no backup. And so we said, okay, well, we'll help you with that. We'll still.
So you can't wipe out those backups post encryption?
Well, no, you can. The time machine backup that's already scheduled, if you've been doing it before you encrypted, they'll keep doing it, but it will unencrypt those backups because the time machine's not backed up. The only way to get the time machine backed up is to totally wipe it and then do another backup that's encrypted the first time.
Yeah, one intermix encrypted and unencrypted.
Exactly.
We'll just default to unencrypted.
Yeah.
It has to be either all encrypted or
I don't think a lot of people realize that. We didn't know that at first.
Can you see easily on the time machine whether or not it's encrypted?
I don't
Not my
think
recollection
so.
that you can.
Yeah, I don't think so.
What's the difference once we might
Yeah, I don't think that
Probably
there is
goes to slow
anything
down
that
if
says.
it was unencrypted when you're backing up to it. Because the system has to go through a decode process
Yeah.
of encrypted data. So if you're going from an encrypted device to an unencrypted time machine, you're going to have a slower backup
Yeah, it is
process
going to slow down.
if it goes.
Can't be. It's
It's probably
as said
not-
earlier, processor
not
speeds are so high these days that most of the time, unless you're crunching already, you're not going to be able to
And
tell.
I find a lot of people do their time
You
machines
can't tell the
overnight or
difference.
whatever.
Like, I can't tell the difference between one
And 9 times out of 10,
encrypted
most of the
or
time
just
you're
be
buying
looking at
iSets.
the time machine.
If not worse.
The only other thing I want to...
data moving. Okay, remember after the encrypted, everything is just a small bit of data you encrypt, so it doesn't big penalty. But if you have a folder, thousands of JPEG file or whatever, you just move it will penalize your laptop. So don't get that wrong. Okay.
I find that's not so true. If you're using full disk
I did it.
encryption. If you're using,
Trust me,
in
I
our
did.
experience, if you're using full disk encryption, even that first time, when you first turn on it, has to go through the entire system.
Yeah.
For the stuff that's built, the native encryption that's built in, it's pretty good about not taking up too many system resources. If you're using Mcafee encryption, it slows things way down. And again, we tried to avoid it. On Windows, in the end, we only ended up having to use that digital encryption, Mcafee encryption for drive encryption for one computer. Everyone else we were able to get to either 8.1 or Windows 10. And even on that one computer we had problems. It's fine now, but and I'll talk to that in a minute. The other thing is that even for our 8.1 users, we kind of said, listen, you guys should upgrade to 10 as well if you're okay with it, because any new computer you're going to get is going to have 10, and all your colleagues are going to have 10. We just want to, if we can, keep kind of a base level in the market. Now, not everyone needed to, so we didn't have everyone do it, but we kind of suggested that people did it as well.
So your backup procedure was non-revertible. You just saved the user files.
No.
You updated and then.
If you're doing the in-place upgrade that comes with Windows 7 and 8,
okay,
you can always downgrade if there's a problem, which I've done before.
As long as you don't. I'm not very good at that. You can look on the Microsoft.
This is before encryption or anything else. For all intents and purposes, as long as everything works fine during the upgrade, if you run into problems with things you don't like about it, or you have some system issue, you can click the downgrade button, and I've never seen it not work, although I'm sure it has.
I think I was at a Microsoft training. I think about 98%.
Yeah.
Success.
And the other thing too is that you won't even get the button that says, "Hey, upgrade to Windows 10," unless Microsoft is fairly confident that your system will work. It's pretty staged out. So we were pretty confident that the Windows 10 upgrades would be okay, and they were. Yeah, so we had very few problems. Things were very smooth. Of all the machines we encrypted, we had 3 issues. So we had this one Windows 7 machine where we wanted to use the oldest encryption through Mcafee. And it did encrypt. It did all the things that it normally should do. And then we rebooted, and none of the stable accounts that we associated with it worked. The users didn't, mine didn't, nothing worked. No idea why that happened. I called Jason, and he was able to just sort of tell me what to do to get out of that, because I just wasn't sure. And, Jason's been a great resource. I would call him a number of times. Always had a great answer. Basically, backed out that encryption, unencrypted, rebooted a couple times. A couple days later, when the faculty member was okay with it, we tried it again, and worked fine the next time. I don't know why it didn't work that first time. Very bizarre. But again, it's working now. But it was another reason why I really don't love the Mcafee encryption product. It's also much slower. You can see more of an impact with it. We really are trying to avoid it if we can. We had a Windows 10 issue where, not an issue, this is kind of a success really. We had a motherboard pretty much die on a Windows 10 laptop. We were able to take the laptop's drive out, plug it in somewhere else. The other Windows machine said, "Oh, well, this is using BitLocker. I know what to do with this." Went to the Mcafee console, grabbed the escrowed key, typed it in, was able to unlock the drive, get the faculty's data all off of it, got a new laptop, able to put all that data back onto it. Nothing was lost. It really had hardly any impact. And the fact that the key was escrowed with UBC was great. We didn't have to save anything manually. It just worked great. It worked exactly how it should have, which we're very happy with. Jason talked about the Mcafee OS X installer. Normally, he's right. Patience, for sure. We have had 3 or 4 times when, even after a week, nothing's happened. No idea why. I looked at the logs. It all seems like it should be working. In all those cases, uninstalling it, and there's a script you can do to uninstall it cleanly, rebooting, reinstalling it, worked immediately.
Just because the install folder.
So there's no feedback telling you I'm still working?
No, you'd have to look at the...
No.
The installer is not great on OS X. When it works, it's very clean, like it's nice and easy, but it's just, there's no feedback. On Windows, you can at least kind of see what's happening.
I've brought that up with Mcafee numerous times, and there's no plans.
Yeah, very odd. I don't know why they would... In any case, when these have happened, and it's been not too many times, uninstalling it and reinstalling it has totally fixed the problem. So,
if you have maybe a little small client, it's just the thing, like sometimes Java does it, you just run it and says, "Oh, you have this, TPM, you have this, this is what these are all the things that will work for you."
Well, there are some things I don't think I have them all installed, but there's some pre-flight check things that we can do prior to enablement. I haven't really looked at it much because most people won't do them anyways, because it takes time. But they are there. It's just,
yeah. So, at last count we had 76 laptops, a mix of OSs. We have a Linux user who did PGP on his own. Actually, we have no Linux users. So 62 laptops were encrypted. 5 kind of had a reason that they're not. I believe all 5 will be encrypted eventually once they get back to the department. 9 have yet to be encrypted, but they're still planned to be. So we're at a rate of 81% pretty much, which we're pretty happy with. And we want to get those last 9 and those other 5 actually too. I mean, we really want 100%, but if we got to 80, we felt like we had done a good job. So there's more and more. I mean, there's 76, but that's gone up and down as laptops have come in and left, and we've encrypted more than that, but 76 active right now, give or take.
So we said there's a 1 minute guy who the PHP himself. Did you ask him? Did he tell?
I have not asked him what his steps were because I actually meant to. I'll go back around and find out what he did.
So basically, we tried it, and there's a problem. If the machine already installed, you can't do the full disk encryption anymore.
Okay.
You can only do till the home a particular volume encryption, but you cannot do the whole encryption. You have to do it from beginning. All kinds of doesn't work. So we really need you guys to get the commercial software if.
Well,
for
that's the problem,
right?
is there's no real commercial software that does it.
Yeah.
There's really not much out there.
And that's what we found too. So that's why we weren't managing Linux encryption, although we have had users who did it. I'll circle back around for this particular user, and I can post something to FoS IT and just find out what
Semantics is available, or
it was. I don't know if it's still. Are you still giving it to people who want it?
Not right now. Yeah. We're reviewing the product selections. We need to get the license and support upgraded. It's just figuring out what you don't want to commit to a product and it's not going to support the environment.
So yeah, Linux encryption is really in flux. I find that most of the Linux users, if they're savvy enough to kind of, well, we weren't talking about the numbers, but if they're savvy enough to be running Linux 24/7, usually they will be able to figure out how to encrypt themselves. But that's something to do.
Quick question.
Yeah.
In Ubuntu installer, when you're installing recent versions, 14 or 15, the home partition can be encrypted by default.
That's great.
I mean, when you're setting up a brand new Ubuntu system, it gives you the option whether to install it. You want to encrypt your home space, and then practically any user you create by default that's not an admin user will have the home space encrypted. So that's
yeah, that's a fresh install. So that's easy. The fresh install one I'm not worried. I'm worried people already installed their laptop.
We're talking about LUP, right? The Linux.
Yeah. So
they're basically Linux native, right?
Yeah.
That's a good point too on Windows and Mac OS these days. Out of the box, if you buy a brand new Mac and it's running on 10.10 or 10.11, I don't remember if this is new for El Capitan or if it was running on 10.10 too, but during the setup process, and when I'll say, hey, we recommend that your machine is encrypted, and you have to physically turn that off when you're going through the setup. So these days, things are coming out of the box pretty much encrypted. Not the case with every new Windows machine. It seems like maybe manufacturers can change the setting around, but by default, if you've left everything to Microsoft standards, Windows 10 will do the same thing and say, hey, it's going to be encrypted.
That's
you want it not to.
home or Stu.
Not on home
Pro too. Okay, that might be
Pro. We only install Enterprise, so
yeah.
Enterprise 100%.
The default one, I did have one brand new this morning. Yep. It's a Surface Pro laptop.
That would be useful. So that's
it's a brand new. It's not automatic.
Okay, so it's for home.
Turn it on.
Okay. But home users, that's a lot of people get cheaper laptops when they come with home. So yeah. So our next steps are we were really happy with the encryption so far. Right now we're replacing all of our admin desktops with NUCs, and as we pull one out and replace it with a NUC, we have encryption turned on those. So even now for our desktops that all of our admin staff use across these 2 buildings, they're going to all be encrypted. We do need to work on what we're going to do with TAs. We've told them it's available. A number of TAs have contacted me and instructors like Sessional saying, hey, I've turned it on just so you know it's being run on my own. But we haven't yet kind of gone through all of them and said this is what you need to do. We're not quite sure what we're going to do. So far it's kind of been like, hey, can you turn on encryption? And some have said sure, and some just haven't.
So what you do is just offer them a little piece of software that they require to do their work every day, and then when they come in to get that installed, say, hey, by the way, can we install
Yeah. And well, if you guys want the slideshow, we can pass around. I attached this is quite too small, but we send a little email to faculty at the very beginning, kind of saying, hey, what we're going to do. And we've sent it back a few times, and this is all, probably needs to be rewritten and stuff, but just an idea of how we got people's attention originally. Yeah, so I don't know if anyone else has any other questions, but we had pretty good success. It was a lot of work, unfortunately, and a lot of labor crunch talking to everyone individually, but we were able to do it.
So I have one, I haven't done math yet, but start I done because it's much smaller. There are only 21 faculty. I got 99% done, only 1% left. The way is that they have a brown bag meeting for the faculty, and they have asked me to go in, and everyone bring in a laptop. You get everyone done about the same time, right? And they go even further. They said print out the key escrow, and they give it to the admin office. So, if someone dies, something they need to recover, they can go there and ask for that piece of key to recover the data if you need to. And everyone is happy to do that.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah.
Thanks. There's a question up here.
So, do you recommend that new laptops people buy with the TPM module, or is it not really necessary now?
Well, on the Windows side, so it's not necessary anymore. If you're on Windows 10, you can very easily run a PIN. I do have faculty who kind of say, oh, I have to log in twice. That's kind of a pain, but they still do it. I want to say most laptops these days, if they have a Core i7, I think come with it for the most part.
I thought the new Gen were i3 and above, but...
yeah, I couldn't remember. It might be mandated now by Intel if you have like a specific classification. So say you have, I want to be classified as an ultrabook. I think now it has to have TPM in it. But not everything will, and certainly cheaper stuff won't. I think it's still worthwhile to recommend machines with it. It's less hassle, and the price has come way down on them. But again, not everything has it. But the nice thing is, even if it's a brand new machine and it doesn't have it, at least we can still now use pins. And there's no weird registry hacks, and there's no only enterprise version, or Microsoft and Apple both said, no, we want pretty much everyone to be encrypted.
To comment to you, you talk about i5, i7. I just test one of the i5 from Acer. They don't have it. It's brand new.
Is it as well, or is it one of the?
It's a 5th generation, right? So it's an i5. So they don't have it.
The 6th generation is that now Ivy Bridge or whatever it is? I can't remember. I think the 6th generation might have had a change, but I'm not 100%.
I was trying to. I heard it somewhere, and I don't know where I heard it, but
I don't know if it's a coming soon thing or what. But yeah, not everything's going to happen.
It's like a $10, $20 upgrade in January.
So my question is that, like, let's say you have the Windows 10 Home Edition without TPM. So what method of encryption do you recommend?
Windows 10 has a nice, beautiful, lovely upgrade path, and our current UBC licensing allows for it.
Oh, that's a personal one, is the Home Edition.
So if you have Windows 10 Home,
I don't know how that works, does it?
You would have to get Pro.
So they have to pay for it to get.
They would have to pay to upgrade. And you can do.
I was just going to say, there are free things you can use too, like you throw Bear on there or something.
So, yeah, that's very true. There's no, you don't have to use the built-in encryption. It's great if you can. If they're willing to, there's now these days, I think this direction Windows 7, there is a way to in-place upgrade from Home to Pro. You can just click through a couple buttons and it'll, you pay for it and it'll make a new key. For us, we were lucky enough to have DreamSpark access for most of our faculty, and most of our faculty don't use those keys. So for the people who ran into that situation, we were able to use their DreamSpark 10 Pro keys to do that little in-place upgrade. And it's very seamless. You type in your key, you enter, the system realizes it's an upgrade, it makes you reboot once, and then you have Pro. It doesn't have to do some long reinstall. There's not some kind of crazy reinstall.
Can you write out that little bit for us? That would be.
That's with Windows 10.
That's what 8 does it too.
Home to.
8 does it. At least 8 months.
Can you have the code just put out it just changes registry?
Or is that to go into enterprise?
That's it.
I know Pro is, or Windows 10, you can go from any version to any version.
Okay. Well, in any case, Windows 10 for sure you can, and I thought you could do an 8 as well. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's a
And your solution
Jason,
is
this information very important to us.
You're the guy, that can't do everything. I'm only one person.
another one, like let's say just someone you want to stick with their Windows 7 Home Edition
Yep.
without TPM, what can we do?
So if they totally want to stick with Windows 7 Home, then they can use the Mcafee encryption. So the Mcafee drive encryption totally works. We've used it. Right now we only have it on one system, although we've had it on one system. We do lots of testing with it. It's totally fine. It's a little slower. You can feel the performance impact on it.
Well, it's actually not bad now. You got to remember, Mcafee is an Intel product. They're an Intel company.
You're right,
So all the algorithms are built into it. So the older versions were probably more lacking. Like I did benchmarks on it. And I didn't see much difference.
I would just say that the reason I find that it tends to be slower is also because if it's a system that's running Windows 7 Home, it's probably an older system, so it's not quite as speedy. You know what I mean? So, but it totally works. And you basically the way it works is you get a little blue screen when you boot up that says, "Hey, type in the password." Kind of very similar to using a PIN. You go through that process and make your unlocks, and then away you go.
Jason, didn't you run the utility on the disk to get more success out of the Mcafee install?
Well, you can do scan disks, things like that. I always suggest backup, do a system check, scan disk, make sure that there's no issues with the drive, and then do your encryption.
Yeah, just running a scan disk. And you can just do that from within Windows, just the right click on the drive, and then you can scan.
And that seemed to be the difference between our success and not, as you had suggested scanning the disks beforehand, and we hadn't done that.
It'll
So
fix
when
that.
we met with you forever ago,
Yeah.
that seemed to be like the one missing piece for us. Scanning the disks.
I have a question for Larry. Most of this information that's on these mobile drives is class lists, right? I'm just guessing that that's what it is. So like the 160 student records, that's probably a class list.
Yes.
Have you guys leaned on the guys rewriting the student information system to make sure that the easiest way for people to manage their class info is online? Because the only reason people are downloading class lists to use on their laptop is because there's not an easier way to do what they need to do.
There's various reasons for why they have lists on their devices. There's no one good answer as to we can do development on SIS, and we're trying not to do any more development on SIS, right? As we're trying to figure out a new replacement for it.
New project.
Yeah.
4 years from now, there's going to be something different.
Yeah, so it's only major developments are what we're looking at.
SASE, right? Yeah, there's the code word. But shouldn't that be a design priority on their part? That they make it.
If we knew why, if there was one systemic issue as to why people had class lists, and we could fix it. I just haven't heard of one systemic issue. I've heard of every faculty member's got a different reason for why they have class lists.
So you looked at that problem.
Sometimes it's because they're just typing in grades. They don't want to do it later or on SIS, and then they go at the last minute. They hand off the file to their TA and say, TA, go upload all this to SIS. They just don't. There's just every other reason under the world.
So that has to be looked at from that angle.
I would say we've also used this as a springboard a little bit just to try and encourage use of Workspace a bit more. I don't know how many of you guys have used Workspace 2, but it's pretty good. One was not great.
Well, this is what I'm seeing is that there's sort of a mixed message here. Like what he's saying is that you can easily make a top-down decision. Okay, we're not even going to give you the ability to download, and you'll have like pitchforks out. Okay, I understand that.
But if they want it, they'll just take a screen snapshot.
Yeah,
and then they have the data anyhow.
But I'm saying is that you're enabling them. You're enabling them to make it easy to use the data. And same with Workspace, because if you think about it, it actually exacerbates the problem, right? You're actually replicating this sort of data, the client part. Like if you just use it for distributing information, that's good. But a lot of people are using it as a file replication tool, which actually makes it worse.
And then you go back to the category of having encryption on your device.
Yeah.
If you're replicating and you're using that.
So
client.
I don't know whether I should actually say, use Workspace. Well, yes, use Workspace if right now you're using Dropbox.
If anything, you should be using Workspace to keep your data anyways. We had a case where a researcher had 4 years worth of data on his laptop, Which, yes, he was uploading to Dropbox. He brought his machine into wherever it was to be supported. They tried to decrypt it. Decryption failed. Formatted the drive, reinstalled Windows, encrypted it with BitLocker, handed it back to the guy who's like, where's my data? That data is no longer recoverable because when you enable BitLocker, it zeroes out the data. So there's all tons of reasons to always keep your data backed up.
Workspace does that for you automatically by syncing it with the network share.
Okay, Workspace is a replication tool, but as a backup tool, because if you accidentally delete it,
We use Workspace for all of our investigations. So every time we have to investigate breach server and we have to get log files, we have to put them somewhere that we can all access them. We use Workspace for it. We use it for our most sensitive data, and it works effectively for that. But by the same token, if it's going to laptops, those laptops all need to be encrypted. Within UBC IT, we have mandatory all laptops are encrypted. We don't care.
A question about the Linux encryption. Do you have your own like server for TTP management?
We've done anything like that.
So
everyone in our department who's done Linux encryption has done it on their own. They haven't checked it with us. And as I said, one of our instructors who did it, he knows what he's doing. So I'll find out what his steps were, and I can distribute that to everybody.
Central IT doesn't provide the server for Linux, the PS.
Again, the current support for semantic PGP ended in 2015 in March, therefore no updates have been done to the server side. We're talking about different product solutions, and there's really nothing out there. So we're just trying to figure out what the best option is before we invest more money into purchasing the product.
So the current solution is encrypt on.
If you can natively encrypt it for now, that's probably your best option.
Lux works really well.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
It'd just be nice if we could find a product that would be able to support it.
so can you use Lux to encrypt most of the disk? I mean, it may not protect the boot sector like so-and-so, but
I'm not
it's almost full disk.
Oh, yeah.
I think it is full disk.
It is.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
It just loads just enough to take in keyboarding, but that's pretty much it.
You just need that within that partition that we're always dealing with full encryption.
One last comment when we were talking about using Mcafee as disk encryption. The other reason we tried to only use it on kind of some of the older machines is that those older machines, we don't run into those driver issues. Like the keyboard's going to work, they mostly work because it's an older machine, so Mcafee's aware of it. Putting it on like a Surface or something like that would probably be a disaster. So
you can't put it on a Surface,
yeah, okay.
so don't even try.
But
I will not support it.
that's another reason BitLocker FoS.
Actually, I think it's supposed to work, just don't.
So any device with the touch screen don't even do anything.
Don't even try it.
Okay.
They support touchscreens. That's my code for don't do it.
Good to know.
BitLocker support.
Just a question about the UI. I found like the agent is pretty useless. Like giving feedback, and you said about like having to dive into the logs and stuff. Have you sent that feedback to Mcafee? Because like I go and look at the status, and it doesn't even tell me like the key information I want to know, which is the system encrypted? It shows like a green. No, on Windows they'll show like a green box.
Windows 100% gives you information. Windows gives you everything you need.
Yeah.
Worst case, if it's using native encryption, you can check the BitLocker status.
Yeah. We've only encrypted a few machines, and that was previously with the native, or not the non-native encryption, with the Mcafee encryption, and we had quite a few issues with it actually.
Yeah. So another option, just if you have access to it quickly, is you can check the Mcafee management console.
Yes, but I want my end user to be able to go click one button and say, oh, hey, I'm encrypted or I'm not encrypted, contact your IT support. the agent is really like convoluted. And
yeah, it's not great. I think it's better than it was. On a Mac, it'll give you a warning. It'll be grayed out and say, attention.
Red exclamation.
Yeah, on Windows, I feel like I've seen it.
For drive encryption, it gives you everything you need in the Mcafee status window.
Yeah.
And on BitLocker systems, BitLocker management.
Yes.
Again, Mcafee agent on a BitLocker system is only there to enable BitLocker.
Yes.
So
Everything else is in
why are
BitLocker.
these people still having problems? If the agent is updating
It could be an
itself,
old version of the agent.
aren't they updating itself?
There's a lot of
Supposedly-
aspects to take into account when you're auto-deploying out an agent to a system. Does the system account that's currently logged into that system have administrative access? If yes, then great, you're going to get an upgrade. If not, then no. Is the system connected to the internet on a regular basis? If yes, then you're probably going to get the upgrade. There's a lot of factors. There's DNS factors. There's a lot of different reasons why the push or pull of that update will not work. All I can do is make it available and hope that it goes through.
It was about a year.
Okay, so it could be an old agent. The agent that these days is pretty good.
Yeah.
I would say. Not amazing, but it's pretty good. And again, it's not doing much itself, but it will give you the information.
I mean, we also found like the admin console kind of convoluted in the way that you tag. I mean, the tag things is actually better than the previous way it was, but it's still non-intuitive. Definitely had to read the documentation, and we can soak up that pain, but it's the end user one that I want to tell my faculty member, check that. That tells you you're protected. And right now,
So if you want your faculty members to know if they're encrypted, tell them to open File Explorer and look at their C drive. If it's got a little lock beside it, it's done. If it doesn't, then you're not.
and that's in Windows 10 or 7?
That's all
Both?
BitLocker version.
7, 8, and
The BitLocker versions. Okay.
that little lock is the code for BitLocker.
Yeah.
So if that's there, it's running.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It might even look like it's unlocked, but it's still it's running.
Yeah, we really just start looking at the native encryption management aspect, but we haven't yet. We just did the Mcafee one, and yeah, it wasn't really up to snuff for
And
us.
if you guys have questions that you feel like are not high level for Jason, feel free to contact me as well. We've done a lot of experience with that. So.
All right, you guys, it's getting kind of late, so I want to thank you very much for coming out.
I think should not contact you that email. I think you guys should start use Slack so you can share information, right?